As it becomes both technically and economically feasible to send electronic messages to large numbers of possible recipients, the problem of deciding who will receive a particular piece of information will become increasingly important. The information lens system is designed to help solve this problem. The information lens system runs on Xerox 1100 series workstations connected by an Ethernet. The system is written in InterLISP-D. It's built on top of the existing electronic mail system in that environment, and it makes heavy use of the Loop's artificial intelligence tool system. Users of our system can continue to use the existing electronic mail system, addressing messages to individuals or distribution lists as usual. In addition, they can add to their messages a special addressee called anyone, which signifies that they're willing to have this message go to anyone else who's interested. What happens then is that the message goes directly to the initial addressees of the message and also to the anyone server, a kind of intelligent postmaster that compares this message to its interest profiles for all the other users of the system and forwards the message on to anyone else who it thinks might be interested in the message. Now, what does it look like to use the system? Users can lay out the windows on their screen however they want to, but I'll show you the standard screen layout for non-programming users of the system. On the left side of the screen are several windows used mostly for receiving and storing mail. The top window shows the folders I've set up to store messages about different projects and other topics. If I move the mouse to point to one of these folders and click on the folder, then another window appears showing a table of contents for that folder. I can select a message in that window and display it in the window below. Now let's look at what happens when I want to send a message. On the right side of the screen is a diagram of the different types of messages in our system at the moment. To send a message of a particular type, I just point to the type of message I want to send. For instance, to send a meeting announcement, I just click on Meeting Announcement. As you can see, the meeting announcement template includes not only the fields present in all types of messages, but also some additional fields that are particularly relevant to meeting announcements. Some of the fields come up with their default values already filled in. For instance, the system assumes by default that you want to send a copy of any meeting announcement to anyone who's interested. You can always, of course, use the built-in text editor to change the contents of any field at any time, to delete or to add or anything else. More interestingly, however, you can point to a particular field and get additional information about that field. For instance, you can find out its default value in case it had one and you've already erased it. If it's a template with which you're unfamiliar, you can get an explanation of what the field means. For instance, here's the explanation for the place field of the meeting. Most interestingly of all, you can click on Alternatives and get a list of likely alternatives for this field in this type of message. And if you select one of the alternatives, it's automatically inserted in the message. Let's say, however, that what I really want to do is to send a message announcing our regular weekly project meeting to the other members of our research group. Since this is a kind of message I send frequently, we have a message type already defined for that kind of message. To send it, I just click on Lens Meeting Announcement. As you can see, the Lens Meeting Announcement template already has almost all the fields filled in with default values. To send it, all I need to do is change a little bit. For instance, change the default meeting date to next Monday and add a little text about what we will discuss. And then click Deliver. As you can see, the system sometimes makes it much easier for senders to compose their messages, as well as for receivers to specify what they want to have done with the messages. Now let's look at how a receiver specifies what to do with messages. As you can see, the message types are arranged in a network, with the most general message type of all, Message, at the left. The next level shows 3 different kinds of messages distinguished according to purpose: action request, notice, and commitment. These 3 types of messages are based on the classifications of different speech acts developed by linguists. As we move to the right in the network, the message types get more and more specific. Some, like request for information and meeting announcement, would be useful in almost all organizations. Others, like Len's meeting announcement or Len's bug fix request, are tailored specifically for our own organization. We expect that people in different organizations would tailor their own kinds of message types. Each of these message types automatically inherits the field names and the properties, like default, explanation, and alternatives, from its parent message type, unless specifically overridden. We can also associate rules for processing incoming messages with each of these message types, and these rules are also inherited. Now let's see how to create a rule for processing incoming messages. Suppose I want to create a rule that says, whenever I receive an action request from anyone about anything, if the action deadline is today or tomorrow, then I'd like to move it to my urgent folder. To create a rule, I simply click on the message type with both mouse buttons, select Edit a Local Rule Set, and then select Add to add a new rule. The rule editor looks a lot like the message template editors, with the same kind of side menus available, giving alternatives for the different kinds of fields. In our case, we want to construct a rule that says, if the action deadline is today or tomorrow, then, and we have a variety of different actions we can take, we can automatically move it to a folder, which is what we want to do in this case, to delete it, to set a characteristic, and so forth. The moving to is the default action already present in the rule template. If we click on alternatives for move to, we see the folders that the message can be moved to. We want to move it to the urgent folder. So we've just constructed the rule. To save it, we click Save. And now the rule appears in summary format in the rule set editor. Let's look at a few of the rules I have stored. First, I have rules that apply to all the messages I receive that say, if the topic is Len's, then, and the characteristics are not moved, then move to the Len's folder. In other words, if it's a message about Len's that hasn't been moved by any other rule to another folder, then move it to the general Len's folder. Then I have a rule that says, if the message is from me and it hasn't been moved by any other rules, then move it to the outgoing copies folder. We also have in our system a daily online feed of New York Times articles, which come into our system addressed to anyone. At the anyone server, they're first sorted by the rules that different people have specified, saying which kinds of messages they're interested in seeing. These are what we call central rules. My central rules for New York Times articles say, if the subject is computers or movies, then show it to me. And if the category is international news and the priority is urgent or flash, then show it to me. So those are the rules that get New York Times articles from the anyone server to my workstation. Once they arrive at my workstation, then they go through a second set of rules, my local rules for dealing with New York Times articles. They're shown here. The first rule says if the subject is computers, then move to the computers folder. If the subject is movies, then move to the movies folder. If the article date is less than today and the characteristics are not moved, that means it wasn't either of these. It was one of the international news articles that was urgent. But I didn't see it on the day it was urgent. I will assume that I've heard about it some other way. I don't want to be bothered with it here, so delete the message here. Finally, if the characteristics are not moved or not deleted, then move it to my general New York Times articles folder. We've seen how to compose messages and how to specify rules for processing them. Now let's look at what happens when I'm ready to get my mail. I simply click Get Mail at the top of the screen. As you can see, I had 25 new messages waiting for me. The messages first go into the Mail folder, and then the rules will be applied to each message in turn to see whether that message should be automatically moved to one of the other folders. The numbers in parentheses here indicate how many new messages have been automatically moved into each folder. I usually look first at my urgent messages, then at whatever non-routine messages are left in the mail folder, and finally at the other messages. Let's look at the urgent folder. Here's one of the new messages marked with a question mark. This is a message from my secretary asking me if I can meet with some visitors today at 3 o'clock. It's a meeting proposal, which is a special kind of action request whose action deadline is today. So it was moved to the urgent folder by the rule we created a few minutes ago. If I have any question about how it got here, I can always click on History and see a list of the rules that fired to get the message to this place. Here it says it was the action request local rule that said if action deadline tomorrow or today, then move to urgent. So that's a simple kind of explanation facility that can be used to understand, or in some cases debug, the rules I've set up. One of the nice things about having the system know the type of the messages I receive is that it can suggest likely actions I might want to take on receiving different kinds of messages. For instance, if I look at a message of type bug fix announcement, the system, in addition to presenting the usual options of answer, forward, and so forth, also presents a special option appropriate to bug fix announcements called load file. So if I click on load file and then say yes, the system would automatically load for me the file specified in the appropriate field of the message without me having to retype that long file designation. Even though our system was originally designed to help with the information sharing problem, the basic framework is surprisingly useful for many other kinds of coordination. Let's look at a simple example of how our system could help a group of people arrange meetings with each other. Imagine that one person wants to schedule a meeting with 3 others. He could send a meeting proposal message to the 3 other people, each of whom might have set up different ways for dealing with meeting proposals. For example, one person may automatically forward all meeting proposals that aren't from that person's secretary to that person's secretary. Another person may have no automatic rules set up to handle meeting proposals, but when she reads the message, the system knows enough to suggest that a likely action on receiving meeting proposals is to accept the meeting. When she accepts a meeting proposal, the system automatically constructs a meeting acceptance message with all the information copied over from the meeting proposal. She can, if she wishes, add some additional text to the meeting acceptance message. And then click Deliver.
One more time.
Another person may have rules set up that automatically accept meeting proposals from members of his own research group. When the original sender receives the last of the acceptances, he knows the meeting can be held at the proposed time, so he can respond to that message by clicking the option Announce the Meeting. While this simple example certainly doesn't solve all the problems of scheduling meetings, it does show how the use of semi-structured messages can simplify the design of new applications for supporting a variety of organizational processes. In some cases, users can design new applications for themselves using only the primitives already provided by the system. In general, we've seen in this tape how the use of semi-structured messages can be used to provide automatic aids for composing messages in the first place, for selecting, sorting, and prioritizing them, for responding automatically to some messages, and for suggesting likely responses to others.